Okay, well, let's move on to our second speaker. Carla, thank you so much for coming along and speaking as well.
Thank you.
So Carla Gaggini has been managing content, events, and communities since 2011. She started with experimental music festivals, wow, and eventually ended up in tech, where she fell in love with its ecosystem. Right. During her career, she has produced and run many conferences. You have my sympathies, Carla, even virtual ones, meetups, webinars, hackathons. She currently heads the content events and community department at Container Solutions, driving and implementing the strategy around the WTF is Cloud Native brand. I like that name. The Software Circus community, as well as all Container Solutions marketing campaigns. And she's also an ambassador for a couple of things like CNCF. Carla drinks way too much tea. Thankfully, green tea. Has an unhealthy obsession for Japan and a big passion for art, music, cinema, philosophy, and fashion. And her pronoun is she, her most of the time. So that's enough of me introducing and talking. Carla, if you would take it away. Please get started. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Let me share the screen. Everything is working, right?
Yes, everything is working. Fabulous.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you, Richard, and thank you, Sinead and Omotola, for a great talk. Now the pressure is on. But this second talk today is, as you can tell from the title, about building and maintaining inclusive communities. So very quickly, the agenda for the talk. First of all, I'm going to start with a couple of definitions, just to make sure that we're all on the same page and we understand each other. Then I'm going to go into the building part. How do we make sure that the communities that we build are really inclusive and diverse? And the third part is going to be about maintaining these communities. And of course, I'm going to close the talk with some takeaways that hopefully are going to be useful for you. Right. So without further ado, I'm going to start with the initial part about definitions. So what does it even mean to be an inclusive and diverse community? There is a great quote by Verna Meyers that says, diversity is being asked to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. So basically, this is the best party that you want to attend. It's a party where everybody is respectful of each other's differences. Everybody is willing to understand each other. Everybody is not judged, no matter their political views, their gender, their sexual orientation, no matter their marital status, you name it. It's a party where people are aware of their biases, of whether they are conscious or unconscious, and they are doing their best to overcome them. But lastly is a party where no matter how proficient of a dancer you are, you're gonna get to dance anyway. Or you get someone to show you the ropes, like Omotola was saying, someone is gonna help you enter the community. The second question is, why does it matter? Why does it matter for a community to be diverse and inclusive? So again, there is a partial quote here, because we are here today because we love DevRel, because we love communities. But there is another fundamental thing that we have in common, which is the fact that we are all human beings. And as human beings, we have this sense of belonging. We want to be part of something. We want to really feel real connection. And we want to feel this connection without sacrificing our identity, our authentic selves. So that's why it's important that the space encourage this. The last question is, why me? I actually wrote this talk with a dear friend of mine, Jade, that you can see here. And we wrote this talk not because we are a super expert on the topic, but because obviously we've done our research, but ultimately we really care about making a difference. We really care about giving our small contribution to communities and hopefully improve the space a little bit. Right, so that's the initial part. Let's go on the tangible stuff. Right, so how do we build this community? Like we were saying, we need to feel, as human beings, we have this feeling of belonging. We want to belong somewhere. But in order to really feel this emotion, we really need to know ourselves. So it's a process that starts from within. So we start by knowing ourselves, and then we proceed by building these and create this sense of belonging for others. And then this can be expanded to greater and external communities. So that's the process that I'm going to go through. I'm going to start from building the foundation to seeing the result into the external community that Richard mentioned, WTF is called native. So what we did at Container Solutions is exactly this. We started from ourselves and our internal communities. So we ran a series of workshops and we included all the departments from finance, engineering, you see all of them in there. To make sure that literally everybody was represented and every voice was heard. And now that's how we used a sort of value system workshop creation. And you can actually take notes about this because it's a step-by-step process. Or if you have a great memory, lucky you, please keep listening. But that's what we did specifically. So first of all, we had these groups, like I said, from every department, and we also made sure that the group wasn't bigger than 8 people because we wanted really for everybody to have the space to talk. And so each individual had to choose their values, something that it's important to them. And after that, they had to select their top 5 values that are important. They can be from, you see here, family, beauty, honesty, etc. So this was step number 1. After that, we brought all the top 5 values together and we look for commonalities. Because sometimes, fun and humor, they can have a similar meaning, but the nuances and the details can be important here. The step after that was to bundle these bundle these values into themes. Again, this was to make sure to really incorporate all the details and all the different meanings that these values can have for people. Again, under the fun, there is humor. There's humor and fun there, but I mean, that can be something that can be expressed differently for people. And after that, we look for representation of these themes. Why was this important? It's because basically it helped people visualize what these values could mean. Like you can see around creativity, there is David Bowie, there is Tolkien, Walt Disney, and Yayoi Kusama. So it was to give a visual aspect to the value. And after that was probably the most fun part because it was about kind of building this character. It was more like a monster, where we put the values as part of the bodies of this creature. So, for example, you can see passion in sort of the heart of this octopus to see that that's the driving force of the creature. And lastly, we discussed how these characters would behave in a situation. Like how will this weird octopus behave if they see like a building on fire or if they see someone that needs help. And that's because we wanted to picture the behavior. and see what kind of behaviors all these values will bring. Now, this whole process brought as an outcome the values that us as an internal community in the company believed in, the values that reflected our ideals, which you can see here summarized. I'm not gonna go through all of them in detail, but there's gonna be time later to see them also externalized. But in summary, they are growth, trust, purpose, collaboration, and creativity. So this is our North Star. This is what we believe in. So the big question now is actually how do we take who we are as an internal community and how do we make this external, how do we impact the external community? That's what we did building the WTF cognitive community. And we did it starting from the Golden Circle by Simon Selleck, and we identified what we wanted to achieve with WTF is Cognitive. And it's written right there. What we wanted to do was to increase understanding of the cloud native ecosystem, and we wanted to do that through events, through meetups, through blogs, sharing ideas, because we wanted to build a better tech ecosystem for the future. And ultimately, what we wanted to express with WTF is Cloud Native is something by the community, with the community, and for the community. So that was the strategy behind this brand. And that's actually what we achieved, which is pretty exciting because we ran a newsletter, we had over 4,000 subscribers, we ran 14 bi-monthly collections, over 30 just webinars basically, 4 conferences, podcast episodes. This is all we managed to achieve thanks to this strategy. But actually, before I go in this slide, this is all nice. This is all lovely data, and we can be excited about. But the real question is, how are the values that I shared earlier connected to the WTF is cognitive external community? Because we had contributors and we had a community from all over the world. So what I'm going to do is go through all the values one by one now. So first of all, we saw the value of trust. And the value of trust is based on the principle that when you feel safe, you show up holistically. And when you show up holistically means that you show up by your true self. And that's why as a community, we love covering what we call like soft topics. We talk about psychological safety. We talk about how to improve like the remote workplace. We love about mental health issues. These were all topics that even in a tech community, it made absolutely sense to cover and to discuss. Then the other value that we connected from internal to external is growth. And again, growth is based on the principle that when we know better, we can do better. And also on the fact that together we learn more and we can learn much more than what we'd be able to progress on by ourselves. It's basically the same principle as open source. We contribute as a group and we grow as a community. Creativity. Creativity, again, is all about having fun. It's about breaking the rules. It's about taking risks. It's also about making mistakes and thinking outside the box. The pandemic that was mentioned at the beginning was a huge curveball that nobody was expecting. But for us, for our team, it was also an opportunity to pause and think what we could do with our time and with our resources. And that's how WTF is Native was born. We were forced to think outside the box, and this is the result of a situation, and we really tried to make the most of it. Another important value that we saw reflected externally as well is collaboration. Obviously, nobody has all the answers. It's not something that really exists. And we do learn from each other. And that's why our community is based on open call for papers, is based on contribution from everybody in the community. It's not something that is done by our team. That was to really ensure that this product and this community was collaborative and was created all together. And maybe there is someone here that read one of our blogs or participated at one of our events. So if you're there, thank you. And I think lastly, that's the purpose value. And that's an important one because at the end of the day, we all want to do something meaningful. Doesn't matter if it's big or small, we all want to make a difference in the tech ecosystem. And that's why, this community, this Dublin DevRel community exists, why other community exists, because we're all taking our time and dedication and passion to share this knowledge and to work all together. So there's another hard question. And I know that Richard said, I know I love the title, but not everybody loves the title, like WTF is cloud native. So sometimes we had people that didn't want to collaborate with us because, they didn't agree with our tone of voice, with the way we express ourselves. But of course, WTF Native has never been about swearing. It's always been about that golden circle, the purpose that we had to really share knowledge and improve the ecosystem. And that's what we did. Every time we had someone that didn't want to contribute, it was absolutely fine. But we kept on track because we stayed true to our purpose, which was to keep our tone of voice and keep being following our strategy and our ideals. Right. So now we've built, hopefully, a diverse and inclusive community. Everything is lovely, but it gets the hard part. How do we make sure that it stays this way? So of course this slide says it's more than just a code of conduct, but yes, you definitely need one. And one of the first things that you need to remember is that it's for everybody. Doesn't matter if you're the organizer, the sponsor that paid a lot of money to be there. Nobody is above the code of conduct. Why is it important? Because it reflects and opens different point of views. Maybe it makes you reflect on something you didn't think about. And lastly, it's important because it's a reminder of our values as a community and as a group. Now, of course, you have the code of conduct and it's important that it's there, but it's also very important to be able to enforce it. And it's never easy because unfortunately, there's no blanket solution. Every situation is different. You really have to listen carefully and be ready to take action as soon as possible. The question that you have to ask yourself is, what can I do as soon as possible to revert back the situation to a safety environment, to a safe environment? I know we're running out of time. It's a very short story, and it's about a big conference that happened in London just before the pandemic, where I had someone from the audience that came and told me that one of the speakers had used offensive language. Now, of course, I had the contact of the speaker and the attendee was there. So what I decided to do is to give them the opportunity to talk to each other. And the outcome was actually the best that I could hope for because the speaker issued a public apology, and the attendee was very grateful to myself because I initiated the conversation, but especially to the speaker because they listened to them. Why am I saying this? It's because we as organizers are community leaders. We can really make a difference. And even with a small gestures, we can change a situation and we can improve and we can make someone feel comfortable again. So yes, it's about making a difference and it's about making the code of conduct as accessible as possible. Everybody should be able to report a violation in the easiest way. But the last point of this slide is quite dear to me because while it's very important to enforce the code of conduct and to be strict when you have to be strict, we also have to remember that, again, we're all human beings and we can all make mistakes. So if the person on the other side that has violated the code of conduct, if they are willing to learn and be open to improve, we should show empathy and help them in this journey. So very quickly, the key takeaways are that, first of all, it's easy to bond over negativity. Oh, it's so hard to build inclusive communities. Oh, it's so hard to have a diverse speaking lineup. But I hope that with this brief talk, I show that it can be it can be much stronger to bond over values and to build the foundation of the community together. The second takeaway is that you have to listen. You have to listen and give people space to express themselves. That's exactly what Omotola said. Listen to your community, understand what they need and what they can learn from you and what they need to feel safe. Third point, know yourself. First of all, start from the inside out. That's how you can then reflect that in the external community. And fourth, we're all accountable. No matter, like, again, if you're a visitor of the community or if you're the leader or if the organizer, we can all make a difference. It's not somebody else's responsibilities. We're all accountable. That's it. You saw my dog actually in the end. This is Tamago, and thank you all. Thank you. Sorry for that long talk, but I hope you enjoyed and thank you for the invite again.
Carla, thank you so much. That was really, really great, amazing, and the dog, of course.
Yes.
So okay, I find it really insightful, the point that you were making about values, because a lot of events have a code of conduct, but the values are often implicit. They're not explicitly communicated. And I've been involved in conferences and other meetups where I never communicated values. And it's funny, Sinead, I don't know if you remember our discussions when we were planning to set up this meeting last year. But we have ended up with a value statement right at the start, right? It's specifically a virtual meetup to be inclusive so that it's not restricted to one city. I know that's not a very big value, but it is value driven, and we do state it at the start, and it was completely by accident. But I find what you said very encouraging, and I think we should make our values more explicit. That's one of them, but there's a few more. So that is really encouraging, and I'm kind of encouraged just because something that we did at random is actually a good idea, and you have a structure behind it, so that's always good.
I mean, you can build on that because now that
Yeah.
your community is growing, you can get their input and you can expand the value system and the value foundation. So it's an always growing process. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really valuable. I'm just broadening the question then. So we see a lot of the events have codes of conduct, but should it be normal practice to have a values statement, some sort of definition of the values that the event has? And again, to use the sort of example of the Linux kernel mailing list, right, which has the values of tercity and you're allowed to be rude and well maybe not anymore, and you're supposed to know you're supposed to be an expert, right? But those are values as well, so that people understand it. Of course, for a lot of events, I think we'd want the values to be more empathetic, perhaps. But do you think, as common practice, events should think a little bit more about being explicit in their values, making a statement of what they are?
I mean, I think it will definitely build on the weight that they give also to the safety and comfort and inclusion of their community, because it's a step beyond. I think now the importance of a code of conduct as is becoming quite common now. Is I think that we see them everywhere, but to the point that sometimes they are not taken as seriously, because okay, yes, we have the code of conduct, but if you start bidding on that and say, hey, it's a code of conduct that reflects our values as member of the community and as individuals, because we are individuals, then you're kind of going deeper. And it needs to be a process with the community, because again, every individual is contributing. But yeah, I think it will depend.
Yeah.
The
It's interesting because it gives legitimacy to the code of conduct. Code of conducts are sometimes seen as rules or sort of legalistic, which isn't helpful, right? They're meant to create safety and participation. So, okay, I'll just open the floor a little bit. Sinead?
Yeah, you helpfully answered my question before I asked it. So because that was one of the things it was. How do you keep it alive? How do you keep do the values need to be revisited and reviewed and refreshed, and to keep them alive rather than the risk is they were set 3 years ago, and actually are they still relevant? Are they now, as Richard said, they used to be implicit, but are they now actually utterly, they are now the habit and the practice, and now we maybe need to bring in fresher values or whatever. So, but you kind of answered that, making them explicit. But if you want to expand, just how do you keep them alive?
I think that hopefully is also an organic result of the fact of having new people, and again establishing a safe and inclusive environment, because it's all about understanding also what's important for other people, because I know my values, but maybe for another person, I don't know, collaboration or creativity is not as important. For them is about recognition, I don't know, whatever. But it goes much deeper for them. So why not giving the same space and share? Because if that person is feeling that, there's somebody else for sure that has the same need. So as long as you try to feed that and to enrich the value system, I think that it's a way to keep it alive.
Perfect. Thank you, Carla.
Wonderful. Oh, Matola, maybe you have a comment or a question. Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot, but if you do.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Having managed like an intentional exclusive, like a community that is intentionally exclusive for some people, like it's not open to everyone. There are some persons that can join. Having managed such community, when you talk of code of conduct, sometimes you have to enforce it because you are trying to protect your community members. There are some folks that will join your community just to, not follow your code of conduct. That is why frequently you have to remind your community members what your code of conduct are and the fact that it should be followed. And in scenarios where it's not followed, you have steps in place to um, review or take action. Let me put it that way: take action on anyone that didn't follow. I'm talking from the aspect of an intentional exclusive community.
Yeah. And I think this actually reflects the most recent question from the FM, which is in respect of intentional bad actors. So sometimes I think your story, Carla, was interesting because a lot of the time people do things that are hurtful or not really following the code of conduct, but it's more out of lack of understanding, and they can be guided and probably want to be in the end.
Yeah.
But I'm sure everyone here has dealt with issues where there are bad actors, and Sinead will know there is actually an Irish expression for this, right? There is always one.
Yes.
I remember attending a literary event years ago with Seamus Heaney, who's a famous Irish poet, and he was reading some of his poems. One of the members of the audience during the question time stood up and started reading his own poem to the poet laureate, right? Which is, completely taking over the venue. People weren't there to listen to some random guy's poem. And I've dealt with situations at meetups where you have someone who keeps asking questions and they have some sort of agenda, whether it's, as he often says, political or in some other way. So at what point, first of all, is it fair to ban somebody like that, to ask them to leave? And what's the process?
Well, I think that yes, I think it's fair to ban a person, especially if they are not willing to listen, to take feedback, or to improve their behavior. We have to be strict because one person could endanger a bigger community and make a lot of people feel unsafe. So yes, it's not a pleasant thing, but we need to be ready to do that. In terms of process, it can be complex or it can be simple in a way that there is a sort of small committee of people from the group that evaluate the situation. They hear the versions of every party that kind of have a sort of mini um, session about it to discuss how the code was violated, what kind of feedback to give the person who violated the code of conduct, etc., etc. I'm also part of the Code of Conduct Committee of the CNCF, which is obviously the CNCF being a massive organization is much more structured. There is a legal expert in the group, so things are taken quite formally. So there are letters that are drafted when there is evaluation, etc. You don't need to get to that level, but if you are a big organization like the CNCF, you probably need to because it's massive and it's good to have that kind of legal advice, especially in the US, etc., etc. But for smaller community, if you have a safe group that is dealing and looking after the code of conduct, it can be easily dealt with like this.
Yeah, and I think it's just important to say again that as an organizer, you do have the right to protect your community. I think people are sometimes afraid to break inclusivity, but at the same time, it is your job as organizer to defend it. Let's move on to a more lighter question. Rena asks about your experiences in music communities. Is there anything that tech should learn from your experiences in music communities, which tend to bring a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds together?
Right. I love this question. I never got this before. Uh, uh, Ironically, I know what the tech industry shouldn't learn from the music industry is that there's way too
Should
much
not learn.
alcohol in the music industry. So I think it's better to keep the parties and the environment varied as possible with yes alcoholic options, not alcoholic, and again to be as inclusive as possible. Uh, but I think that what can be learned from the music industry is the creativity and the fact that especially because I was doing experimental music festival, it means that everything was questioned. So even playing a guitar wasn't playing the guitar as you usually play it. You would play it with, I don't know, chopsticks, or I don't know, add electronic music to it. So I think it would be good to do this mix and match of formats, also to create different ways to learn, because as well as individuals we have different ways to learn. There's people who listen, there's people who read and watch. So if we can really expand on that, and I don't mean to make songs with about Kubernetes. I know they do that all the time. I mean, that's fun, but it's not the point.
I know a man who does that. I know a man who does that. Yeah, I mean, I've seen other conferences experiment with things like having, instead of having just talks or lightning talks, they have debates. So it's not just a panel; it's meant to be opposing ideas. More like an official school debate or something like that. I think we could definitely do with more variety, more different kinds of learning. The sort of standard conference talk, I know it's a good format, but I don't know if a lot of you have probably seen this. You go to live events these days, a lot of people are on their laptops or their phones or whatever while the speaker is talking.
Yeah.
It is less engaged, I think, than it used to be. Anyway, things keep evolving, don't they?
I tried an experiment a couple of weeks ago. Sorry, very quickly, but
go ahead.
It was a completely random experiment, but I wanted to build inclusive communities using Play-Doh. So we were working in small groups, and I gave a set of Play-Doh to each group, and I said, okay, now create a community that is inclusive. And some people created pizza because everybody goes to meetups and eat pizza. Other people went like overboard. They created like the tiny people, all different, that were in a circle talking. It was mind blowing, and I cannot believe how well it worked as an experiment. So even things like that, because make people reflect. You don't pause and think about these things, but they had to do something with their hands, and they actually created these Play-Doh communities. It was lovely.
Cool.
we'll have to figure out how to do virtual Play-Doh. Maybe there's got to be a way to do it. Okay. I think we have pretty much come to the end. Thank you so much to our speakers. Thank you to everybody participating in the chat as well. Really, really fascinating. Lots of good ideas and lots of stuff to make us think about. The recordings will go up on the YouTube channel, and if you go to devrelmeetup.com, you'll see the links and all that sort of stuff. I do have to say thank you again to contentful.com for sponsoring. It's so great to get support from a company that deals directly with developers. Really awesome. Thank you so much. So appreciative. Our next meetup is on Wednesday, September 27th, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Dublin and London time. Andy Piper, who happens to be here tonight. Hey, Andy, will be one of the speakers. Thank you so much.
He'll bring Play-Doh.
do bring Play-Doh. And also we'll have another speaker, Anil Kunashetty. Really looking forward to both those talks. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day and a good night.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Tola. Thanks, Carla. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.